We're learning very Ches Halacha Yud Hilchos Melochim. Moshe Rabbeinu did not inherit the Torah, did not give over the Torah and mitzvahs only to Yisrael. Let's see what it says in the Peirush. As it says in Dvarim 33:4. Torah tziva lonu Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu commanded us Torah merosh kehilas Yaakov, an inheritance to the gathering of Jacob. As the Mishnah cites Sanhedrin 59a. Amar Yochanan. Yochanan says, "Goy Isaac, but Torah chayav misa." The guy who studies Torah is chayav misa. Shnei Torah tziva. It says Torah tziva lanu, v'lo la umas ha'olam, and not to the nations of the world. And anybody who wants to become a convert from other nations, Shenema, as it says in our midbar, Kochem keger, that there is a concept of like a convert, that a ger has all the commandments of a Jew. Somebody who doesn't want to accept mitzvahs and to become converted, there's no obligation to force him to receive Torah mitzvahs. However, Moshe was commanded from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to force everyone of the world to accept the mitzvahs that Noach was commanded. And if they don't accept it, he will be killed. In case the Mishnah cites Sanhedrin. On 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, somebody who's non-Jew is killed. And he questions, how does the Rambam know in Halacha tests that you can keep a woman who was a captive for 12 months when she's still serving idols? When it says in Yevamos 48a that Eved that didn't want to become circumcised when he was bought by a Jew from a Goy, we turn with him. In other words, we turn things over for 12 months, and that's only if he kept the 7 mitzvahs during that period of time, like we find in Hilchos Yesodei. So Halacha Mishnah answers that his words in Hilchos Yesodei, he has to keep the 7 mitzvahs. That's when he made a condition to begin with, that he won't circumcise himself. But if he didn't make a condition with him, you can keep him even if he didn't keep the 7 mitzvahs. Now he made a condition, right? And he adds that the guest of Mishnah himself wrote in Hilchos Yesodei that would seem from Isur Yibir, chapter 14 Halacha Tes, that a slave that's bought from a goy, you have to convert him. If he doesn't want, you wait 12 months. If he doesn't still accept it, you sell him to another goy. You can't keep him. And if you made a condition to begin with that he will not circumcise him and he will not immerse him in a mikveh for conversion, but he'll be rather a ger who will dwell amongst the Jews, you can keep him at work like a ger toisha, meaning that if he doesn't accept the 7 mitzvahs, you have to keep him like in Hilchos Yesodei. The guy the Mishnah is medayik. If somebody buys a goy from Eved from a goy, has to be megayim. If he doesn't want to convert him, then you work with him 12 months. If he doesn't want to, he has to sell him even without accepting the 7 mitzvahs. The Mishnah says that just as like his words in Hilchos Yesodei, we see like the answer to the question that we asked here, even though the Kesef Mishnah here remains with a question. The Kohen Isha cites the Maracha Abulafia, Mekeves HaMishnah, that they also pointed out that the Kesef Mishnah seems to contradict himself. Here he says he can't do it, and he says he can. Kohen Mishnah explains that the intention by Hilchos Yesodei is from the Rambam. It would seem that he has to accept the 7 mitzvahs whether or not he's keeping him for 12 months or not. But it would seem that it's only if he made a condition with him. And the question is, how does the Rambam know that you are permitted to keep a fast Torah 12 months, even though she's still doing Avodah Zorah? Maybe the din is that you can only put upon him, keep her is only when she kept the 7 mitzvahs, not if she's doing avodah zarah. And only says that from the Rambam in Hilchos Yesodei would seem that you can differentiate. And the Lechem Mishnah is correct in his answer, and there's no contradiction between the Kesef Mishnah and the others. It depends whether or not that in all instances they have to keep the 7 mitzvahs. The Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, we made a condition not to become circumcised. He can keep him when he's a ger toisha, meaning he keeps the 7 mitzvahs. And Hilchos Milo explains, if he doesn't want to be a ger toisha, you have to kill him. According to his opinion, that by forcing him, you force him to be can keep the 7 mitzvahs. He's in the opinion that by Melochim we are told that they have to accept the 7 mitzvahs. If not, they're killed. As we learned in Perek Vov, the 6th chapter, Halacha 4. From this we learned that even an individual that is under our hands, we have to force him to accept the 7 mitzvahs. If not, he has to be killed. That's the source of the Hilchos Torah. The words of the Hilchos Torah here. According to this, the Am learns that since he bought him to be an Eved, and he's under his domain, you kill him if he doesn't want to accept the 7 mitzvahs. The Eved disagrees. He says you don't ask by war only that they should be for slaves, they should pay taxes. And the Hilchos Yesodei is the opinion that there's a difference regarding Hilchos Torah, even though he didn't write anything with that regard here. And also, just as he disagrees on the Rambam, who writes in Hilchos Mila that an Eved that doesn't want to become a ger toishav to keep the 7 mitzvahs of a noach is not killed, but rather he has to sell him to a goy outside of Eretz Yisrael. The Hilchos Yesodei explains that the words of the Sifri in Peirush HaMeir, he sends her off to herself and not to the house of her idol worship. And if she does not separate herself from idol worship, he has to kill her because she's in his domain. And from this he learned, by an Eved, if he didn't want to keep the 7 mitzvahs, and since he's under his hands and he can force him, he doesn't keep the 7 mitzvahs, he's permitted to kill him. So the Meneach and the Machon Nesher point out in Perek Vov Halacha Daled, he writes that you don't kill women in war, and the question is, why is Hilchos Torah killed afterwards? The Hilchos Yesodei and the Machon Nesher want to cite Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, the Yisrael who has a relationship with a non-Jewish, whether she's a minor or an adult, whether she's a unmarried or a married woman, is killed because she is killed because she caused a Jewish person to sin. And just like an animal, this is the reason that the Torah commanded to kill Nois Moav. And therefore Hilchos Torah is killed because she caused a person to have a relationship with her when she was a non-Jewish. But so it's an interesting thought that the idea is the reason she's killed at the end is because she's worse than a captive because he lived with her. But somebody who didn't want to accept, you don't force him to accept the mitzvahs. As the Mishnah cites, that in not many places we find that you keep a ger toishav, meaning a non-Jew keeps the 7 mitzvahs. And he points out a goy who's oisik b'Torah is chayav misa. From the posuk Merosh Gilus Yaakov, the Rambam says that for all generations, all bnei Yaakov have to inherited it, and you have to keep it. Should not be forgotten. And furthermore, our teachers taught us in Medrash. It doesn't say Beis Yaakov or Zera Yaakov or Kehilas Yaakov, the congregation of Yaakov, that the many non-Jews will be converted, They'll be part of the world of Torah, and they'll be part of the inheritance of Yaakov. And those who gather to them. Gerim, the strangers who join us to serve Hashem, as it says in Yeshayahu 56, verse 6. V'nispechu el beis Yaakov, another posting in Yeshayahu 14:1. Nikru kulam kilos, they were all called Ki'ilas Yaakov. The Rambam here teaches us that the Torah is also applicable to converts, because it says Kiger, just like the Ger. The Rambam also explains that Morosh Ki'ilas Yaakov teaches us that the Torah will be also inclusive for those who join and convert and become part of Klal Yisrael. Therefore, anyone who wants to convert, the Meshech Chochmah writes that here there's a special secret. Even the soul of a convert is from Yisrael. Like we find in Shabbos, that Yisrael stood at Har Sinai. What left them was that Zuhamo, that infection from the snake at the time of the Eis Hadas. And converts, their mazel is that their souls were at Har Sinai, and they were willing to accept Torah then, even though other nations didn't. And therefore Moshe gave the Torah to them as well. But a goy that doesn't want to become Jewish, you don't force him to receive the Torah mitzvahs. And even though we're not told to force them to keep the Torah mitzvahs, the Rambam writes, Moshe Rabbeinu was taught that you have to teach them to keep the 7 mitzvahs, and anyone who doesn't keep that is liable for the death penalty. Guess the Mishnah cites Sanhedrin. A ben Noach is killed if he transgresses any of the 7 mitzvahs. The Machon Nesher questions here. It says a ben Noach that didn't keep the 7 mitzvahs is killed, and not that he's killed if he didn't want to keep he didn't accept them. Furthermore, it could be that this is part of what it says, we'll see later, that Goyim are obligated to establish courts and judges who will judge them and warn them and will kill those who transgress on the 7 mitzvahs. But how does the Rambam know that Bnei Yisrael are those that have to judge them and have to kill them if they don't keep the 7 mitzvahs? And he answers that Ben Noach who doesn't keep the 7 mitzvahs, it's not on Bnei Yisrael, on Bezin of Yisrael to kill him, but if Bnei Noach don't want to do it, and they don't want to keep the 7 mitzvahs, then we are obligated to kill them when they are under our domain. And it lets us know in the Torah, the 7 mitzvahs Bnei Noach, in order to obligate Yisrael to force it. In other words, anything that's repeated in the Torah, we know it's repeated to teach for the Goyim as well. And if not, they will be killed. And therefore, he writes that you don't force them to accept the 7 mitzvahs. Ben Noach didn't keep them, is killed because he is a denier of God, and he doesn't want to keep the 7 mitzvahs. He doesn't write everyone in the world should have to keep the 7 mitzvahs. He doesn't write that a Ben Noach who didn't keep the 7 mitzvahs, you kill him. It would seem that Bezin of Yisrael kill him, because only on Bezin shall Bnei Noach is there an obligation to kill everyone who transgresses their mitzvahs. In other words, the individual is obligated by the community to judge them according to the 7 mitzvahs, by a goyish community. But if it's a whole community, then we are obligated to deal with it. In Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, chapter Halacha Vov, he says that when the Klal Yisrael is strong on the nations, it's forbidden to leave a goy who does avodah zarah amongst us, even temporarily. He shouldn't go through our land when he goes from place to place to do work until he keeps the 7 mitzvahs Bnei Noach. It says they should not dwell in your land, even for the moment. The Rae says, we don't find this, we didn't hear of it forever. Posing is talking by the 7 nations, and he adds, according to the Rambam, It says yeshiva, dwelling and not passing through. Rae Gann explains that we don't find that we're forced to tell the 7 mitzvahs only when they want to dwell in Eretz Yisrael. For this reason, it says by the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told us 7 mitzvahs, that they shouldn't be able to dwell in Eretz Yisrael without keeping the 7 mitzvahs. The Rav is of the opinion that we're not obligated to force them to keep the 7 mitzvahs, and his opinion is mentioned in the words of the Or Sameach. We're learning Melochim Be'echaz Halacha Yud Ma'mekabel Oisam. If the goy accepts the 7 mitzvahs, who anikra ger toisha b'chol mokim, he's referred to as a ger who dwells amongst you, not a full convert, but he is a non-Jew who is converted to keeping the mitzvahs of Ben Noach. V'tzorech lekabel olav b'nei shloisha chaverim. He has to accept it in front of 3 Talmidei Chachomim. V'chol mekabel olav limoil, and somebody who accepted to circumcise himself, and then he went through 12 months and he did not go through circumcision. He's considered like a apostate from the nations. Kesef Mishnah cites this source in a Bryce in Avodah Zorah 64b. Who is called a dweller, who is a convert? Anyone who accepted before 3 Talmidei Chachomim not to do Avodah Zorah, that's the words of Rameir. The Chachomim say he had to keep all 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. The Rambam caused the Halacha with the Chachomim that you have to keep 7 mitzvahs, and they disagree what he has to accept, but they agree that he has to do it in front of 3 chaverim. He can't do it by himself. Anyone who accepts it upon himself to circumcise and 12 months go by. Talking about a convert who's a dweller, he wanted to accept to be converted and he did not do so. The case of Mishnah cites Avodah Zorah 65a. Omar Bachana Omar Yochanan Ger Toisha, who did not circumcise himself after 12 months, is like a apostate among the nations. The case of Mishnah explains he's like any other goyim that they have no special unique level. Like we find in Hilchos Yesodei and Hilchos Avodah Zorah, that somebody sees a goy doing Avodah Zorah or drowning in a river, he has no obligation to save him. He sees he's about to die, he shouldn't save him. To kill him or to push him into a well, etc., that's forbidden because we don't want to fight with them. When is that said by a goy from the 7 nations? But minim abikurim and those who are of the like, then you should destroy them, and destroy them because they bother Jews and they cause the people of the follow Hashem to sin. And when it says he's like an apostate among the nations, it means that's his din, that you have to kill him. But the Lechem Mishnah says what he means is like one of the apostates, meaning but one of the people who don't believe. But Loshan Rambam Kemino Umois, without the Yud between the Mem and Nun, so if the Nun at the end would seem that he's just like a regular goy. What are the rules of a ger toishav? In Hilchos Avodah Zorah and Perek Yud Halacha Vav, he says that if he accepted the 7 mitzvahs, he's called a ger toishav, because it's permitted to leave him the toishav Eretz Yisrael. If you didn't accept the 7 mitzvahs, you can't leave him and live in Eretz Yisrael, even temporarily. Hilchos Avodah Zorah, he says you accept a ger to dwell only when your Yovel is actually taking place. That would mean only by the first bias, but not by the second. Because in Hilchos Shabbos he says that we were commanded on not having our slaves do work that went through bris and went through the mikveh as a slave. They kept mitzvahs, then the Eved is obligated. And if they did not circumcise and did not go to the mikveh, but they kept the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, they have a din of a ger toishav, and you're allowed to do work with them on Shabbos, just like Yisrael. They are allowed to do work rather by themselves, for themselves, like Yisrael would do in the weekdays. And with regard to what it says in Shmoyes 23:12, and they should rest the son of your servant and the ger. That's a ger who dwells. That he's a works for you. Like he shouldn't do melochas of the Yisrael for his master on Shabbos, but for himself he can do so. Hilchos Yesodei, he says, what's a ger toishav? That he accepted not to do work avodah together with other mitzvahs b'nei Noach, and he did not go to the mikveh. To circumcise, he did not go to the mikveh. We accept him, and he's considered from the chassidei, from the righteous of the nations of the world. He's called a dweller because he's permitted to dwell in Eretz Yisrael. But we don't accept dwellers in Eretz Yisrael when the yovel is noeg. It says a great toishav accepted the 7 mitzvahs. His wine is forbidden to be drunk, but you can have benefit from it. And you can leave wine by him. You can leave it in his store until a distance that you go for a mill. And you don't leave it on a permanent basis. Also, any dweller who does not do avodah zarah, like the Ishmaelim, their wine is forbidden to be drunk, but you can benefit from it. But the Christians and those who serve idols, their wine is forbidden by law. With Shav Kohen, he points out that he doesn't mention that you have to accept the 7 mitzvahs only in front of 3 chaverim, and he answers the Rambam relied on his words in Hilchos Melochim that you need before 3 chaverim. In Hilchos Yovel, he said that Bisman that the Yovel is noig, din of Eved Ivri, and din of Yesodei HaTorah, and you can accept ger toishav. When it's not noig, ein mekabel ger toishav. Hilchos Yesodei, he says Yisrael that killed b'shoig Eved or ger toishav. Eved shorag b'shoig Yisrael or ger toishav, or ger toishav shorag ger toishav, or Eved b'shoig. There's a din of golas by all of these because it says in the Yisrael like Eved or toishav that there's a concept of Ori Miklot, of sheltered cities. Ger is a Ger Tzedek, or Toishav B'Seicham is Ger Toishav. Ger Toishav that killed the Yisrael B'Shoigig is killed because the Adam is Mud La'olam. A Ger Toishav that killed another Ger Toishav because he thought he was permitted to kill him. He's like willfully killing. And he's killed because he wanted to kill. But a ger toishav that killed somebody, another goy. And but a goy that killed a goy, there's no ger toishav. There's no ori miklot. Only the Bnei Yisrael. However, for the ger toishav there is a din of ori miklot. In Hilchos Yesodei it says somebody who has a relationship with a non-Jewish publicly, which means before 10 from Jews know about it, whether he did it as a marriage or as promiscuity. If zealots killed him, they are praiseworthy. And somebody has a relationship with the daughter of a ger toishav, you don't kill him, but he gets makis mardas. Now, we learned that he has to be accepted the 7 mitzvahs in front of 3 chaverim. Rambam Bri's questions, every ben noach is obligated, and what does it have to do? How does this acceptance in front of 3 dayonim cause him to be a ger toishav? And he answers that that's meaning whether we permit them to live in Eretz Yisrael. Now, Rambam Bri's questions The many dini ger toshav are only with regard to Jews, meaning the ner shehori b'shoigig is nerag. A guy who killed b'shoigig gets killed, and the ger toshav goes to exile. Rae Gann Family. There's no by ger toshav. There's no din of kanoim poigim boy, as we just said above, and other halachas that have to do with the ger toshav with regard to himself, not only to us. But if he recants, we accept him like a menoyach. If he recants, that there's no difference about him. But when he stands with his acceptance of Torah, we give him the dinim, his din, and there's a difference between a menoyach to a ger toshav. According to this, the fact that a ger toshav is only in time of Yovel Noig is regarding these laws. The ger toshav is different than a menoyach. And the Briskerov cites the Magen Mishnah in Hilchos Yesodei that he wrote this regard this is the opinion of the Rambam. The Rae Gann is of the opinion that they only have certain rules when Yovel is Noig and not for everything else. The Briskerov says after Matan Torah there was a concept that every goy has to accept the 7 mitzvahs. If he didn't accept it, he is liable to the death penalty. And here in Halacha Godol, he writes that they're called the righteous of the world, the nations of the world. That means those who keep the 7 mitzvahs, and they keep them, they have a portion to the world to come. And somebody who's careful to keep the 7 mitzvahs without accepting them is not one of the righteous Gentiles. Those who accept it for themselves have to accept it because they're written in the Torah through Moshe Rabbeinu, as we explained in the Halacha. We will explain Halacha Yud Aleph. If they don't accept it, and Yad Yisrael is strong, then they have an obligation to kill them because they're idol worshippers. Besides the Ritvo, the ger toshav Bezin accepts to keep the 7 mitzvahs, and he's called, therefore they consider commanded and doing. Ben Noach, you don't need a Bezin, they keep it from themselves, therefore they're considered as not having been commanded to do it. And when it says in Chabkuk, Ro v'yatir goyim, he saw and he permitted goyim that they're considered like not commanded, and they do it. Siba V'Kama 38a for more clarification.